but thank you so much for joining us. My name is Collins. I am from Dream Legacy Foundation. I'll be your moderator for today's session. And we're going to get started here shortly. We're first going to go through some housekeeping items. And then once we've completed the housekeeping items, I will definitely pass it over and introduce our guest speakers for today. So once again, we are today with part 2 of our leadership series when it comes to the intersection between entrepreneurship and mental health and community well-being. So in collaboration with Carleton University's Sprout School of Business and Dream Legacy Foundation, the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is here to empower Black founders nationwide. Celebrating Black History Month, a Dream series was born, and it's designed to bring supportive programming to Black founders. So before we begin, we're actually going to start with the land acknowledgement. We begin today's session. Before we begin today's session, let's take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we gather. We recognize and respect the traditional owners and custodians of this land, traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Wendasani, and Mississauga, and express our gratitude for their enduring care and connection to this territory. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. In addition to acknowledging the land, we also honor the ancestors who have lived on and cared for this land over generations. We acknowledge the rich tapestry of stories, wisdom, and traditions passed down through ancestral lines. Let us carry forward the lessons and legacies of those who came before us as we engage in today's session. So the BEC, the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, founded by Dream Legacy Foundation, is a national network of research hubs and community engagement organizations dedicated to community-based research. Our mission, to enhance the lived experience of Black entrepreneurs. Today's session and others throughout this month are precisely designed to help you discover strategies that will propel you personally and in your business. We're diving into the theme of the month, which is again, exploring the powerful intersections of entrepreneurship and community well-being. But we have an incredible lineup of influential guest leaders within the community who are eager to share industry insights, expert guidance, and knowledge to support your growth and development. So please make sure you stay tuned with us throughout February, as we have a total of 24 compelling workshops and 2 in-person events that you simply cannot afford to miss. This is more than a series of sessions. It's an exciting journey of growth and empowerment. We also want to take this time to remind you of our ongoing free research skill building workshops that happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. These virtual workshops are meant to help entrepreneurs, business owners, and community leaders grow their research knowledge, skill set, and manage their research projects. Please make sure to tune in for additional insights towards the end of today's session. And 2 ways you can support the work of BEC is to continue to advocate for services and support for the Black businesses nationwide. And that is through our ecosystem mapping and our survey participation. Before we dive into today's session, again, some housekeeping items. Please be mindful of your microphones. Microphones will be muted throughout the webinar to minimize background noise. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to enter those into the chat box. And we want to encourage participation. So this is going to be interactive. I'm sure you guys just don't want to hear me, my voice all day. As much as my wife loves my voice, I'm sure you don't want to hear my voice all day. So please feel free to raise your hand or type your questions into the chat box. And we can definitely field those questions to our guest panelists for today. And then we also, again, if you have any technical support, you can put those questions into the chat. So I will now introduce our guest panelists and speakers for today. We have Miss Helen Ofosu and Miss Sarah Juma. If Helen, you'd like to go first, only because you're first on my screen. If you'd like to take a moment to introduce yourself, please.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Collins. So I'm Helen Ofosu. I'm based in Ottawa, grew up in the Toronto area. My entrepreneurship has certainly been different from most in the sense that I came at it after already having a career as a psychologist and as a federal public servant. So in 2011, 2012, I started putting in place to finally have my own practice. And I'm grateful that I hung in there because it's been very rewarding, very challenging, but also rewarding. My background's in industrial and organizational psychology, which is not really something that rolls off the tongue. It's a very long, kind of clunky field. But in this audience, I think the fact that it relates to business psychology and work psychology is definitely more relatable and accurate. In my company, IO Advisory Services, I've been offering executive coaching, some HR consulting, training, and public speaking. And now I'm in my 12th year. I can't wait. I think a full dozen years. So I like the fact that I've endured, though when I started, it wasn't always cool to be a Black person in business. So I'll leave it there now and listen to Sarah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Helen. My name is Sarah Juma, and I'm thrilled to be here today to just talk about protecting your mental health and just the intersection between entrepreneurship and mental health. Over the past few years, the way that we work has undergone significant changes. So with the rise of remote working and the blurring of boundaries between work and home life, it's more important to me than ever to address the topic of entrepreneurship and mental health. In 2014, I embarked on the journey of a tech entrepreneur by founding Style ID. So Style ID is a mobile app that identifies items worn and seen on screen. We work with costume designers. We connect you after you watch a TV show. I thought it was fantastic. But as a Black founder, I encountered a series of challenges that impeded my progress. And it became apparent to me that my peers were advancing at a faster pace. And it didn't take me long to recognize that my gender and skin color were serving as obstacles to my professional growth. So to address that issue, I ended up founding Innovate Inclusion, which is an organization that advocates for the economic success of historically excluded entrepreneurs. So we conduct research, we provide access, and we raise awareness for entrepreneurs. And one of the programs that I'm most proud of is our Black Entrepreneurship Mental Health Initiative, where we connect Black entrepreneurs to mental health professionals who can help them get past some of the hurdles that they might be facing within the system.
And in fact, that's where you and I initially connected, because I'm not sure if it was year 1 or year 2, you brought me on to provide some executive coaching under that same
right.
year. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So it was year 1 in 2020 when we initially launched. That's when we brought you on board, and yeah, it's been fantastic ever since.
So what would you say is the any success stories that you've experienced from any entrepreneurs that have gone through some of the coaching, or maybe talk about some of the challenges that entrepreneurs were facing when we first encountered them, and kind of the end result on how you're able to get them to the next level to overcome some of these mental health challenges that they might have been experiencing, or other challenges they might have been experiencing within their day-to-day entrepreneurship journey.
But at Innovate Inclusion, we don't like to reinvent the wheel. Like when there's an opportunity to partner with existing programs, we always look for community. We always look to work with the community to expand. And so during the first year of the pandemic, when we launched BEMI, the Black Entrepreneurship Mental Health Initiative, we launched it because there was nothing else like it at the time. And that year, we connected 100 Black entrepreneurs to culturally competent mental health clinicians for 5 free 1-hour support sessions. And so the demand was just incredible. Since then, we've been able to connect 400 Black entrepreneurs and frontline workers with comprehensive support. And I'm actually really, really proud to announce that with the help of the Foundation for Black Communities, later this month, we're launching self-care toolkits for Black entrepreneurs in an effort to meet the consistent demand for support that we see. So I think one of the things that we're really excited, really proud of is the fact that entrepreneurs are receptive to the program that we have available to them, and they're seeking help and they're seeing the importance of it. And from the research that we've gathered back on our program, they're really happy with it. So Helen, I'll throw it over to you to just see some of the insights that you have around what they've worked on or some success stories on your end.
I'm going to go back even before the success stories. Just talk about some of the challenges that Black entrepreneurs are dealing with.
Mhm.
And I think just like with other things, in fact, just with other things, we have the same issues as everybody else, but then we add anti-Black racism to the mix. So as entrepreneurs, most of us don't have a ton of money, particularly when we're first getting started. Not having enough money is very stressful. And even in the beginning, if you're bringing in some money, but that's the same money that you're using for mortgage or your rent and your marketing people, it's just a lot, right? So the financial are definitely one big piece. I think another big challenge is uncertainty. So whether you're somebody who started out as an employee where every 2 weeks you're getting a direct deposit or a check of some sort, you're getting consistent money, or whether you're starting out from scratch and you've never had a full-time job, the fact is that most entrepreneurs, there's some level of uncertainty in terms of whether it's cash flow, whether it's when somebody's going to pay you, because sometimes people pay you late. And sometimes in the beginning, it just takes a while to get established. So that uncertainty is often a big trigger for a lot of people. Or Black. Heavy workloads. Which entrepreneurs are phoning it in? I mean, most of us, we are working. We are hustling. And that's a combination right there. Financial uncertainty, financial hardship, heavy workload. That right there by itself is a recipe for mental health crisis.
You know what, Helen? I have to add to this. Also, the fact that we are Canadians in Canada, our parents worked so hard to immigrate to Canada for us to be doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers, and then for you to tell your family, hey guys, I'm going out on my own, and them being like, what are you talking about? I paid for school so that you can get a good, stable job. It like the family support isn't always there. That's what I found.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably an outlier. Although, yes, I did become a doctor. I'm Dr. Helen. Some people would have looked at me sideways when I said I was leaving the federal government. So I earned good money. What do you mean? What are you doing? Thank goodness I have, a few entrepreneurs in my family, which is not always common, right? But admittedly, in my family, they're normally physicians and lawyers. So it makes sense for those people to grow their own businesses. So at least I didn't have that holding me back. But I know in most cases, families are thinking, well, why are you quitting your job to go and do that? Most people do that to go get a job.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, even though many of us are pretty much dealing with a bunch of things that would compromise our mental health, unlike other communities, we do not normally think it's okay to go and find a therapist. And even if you want to find a therapist, you're going to find one who understands, excuse me, what it's like to be turned down because somebody doesn't like your name or the color of your skin or the way you wear your hair. No, most people are those folks, they don't have a great history of understanding realities of what we deal with. Either they don't want to talk about it at all, or we are talking about it and they're learning from us.
Okay.
So even if you want to get help, well, quite often there's a lot of stigma.
Absolutely. So I think we mentioned, or you both touched on something very interesting. And yesterday's session, I fielded a question in regards to kind of the cultural impacts of mental health, right? And kind of some of the stigmas around it. Can you talk to how culture kind of plays into entrepreneurship as well as mental health? And then after that, we can kind of segue into kind of the tools and resources and solutions, right, that we can use to address some of these things and help entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so in my personal experience, as I mentioned earlier, my parents immigrated from Kenya. They had expectations of me. So they were kind of perplexed when I decided to go against the grain. But just in terms generally of culture, like we were talking earlier, I'm currently in Ghana and I see everybody is so it's very Christian based in terms of religion, and a lot of them just want you to pray and, you know, do other things or find other solutions to heal your mental health. And I find it's similar within a lot of African-based cultures. It's about going to God, going to your pastor, but pastor might not always have the tools to support you in the ways that you need support. So I just think sometimes our culture can hold us back in that regards. And it's important to seek out support that's a right fit for you. But Helen, I'll throw it over to you to get your response on that one.
Well, I think that in our cultures, when we really think about it, we are communal people. We talk to each other. So maybe traditionally we didn't have therapy per se, but there was always a community of aunties and other people who kind of look out for you and talk to you. So I think really in Canada and in North America in particular, I'd say that the problem is that most of the mental health providers just don't look like us. So it doesn't feel very welcoming. I've got a background in psychology, and about 18 months ago, a few of us created a section focused on Black psychology, Canadian Psychological Association. We know that the representation issue is dreadful. There's probably less than 100 Black psychologists in the country. We do better in terms of having more racialized people in psychotherapy, in social work, but psychology is terrible in terms of representation. So I think, you know, even if we get beyond the stigma and we want somebody, without access to your program and without websites where you can filter and search for people with certain backgrounds, it may be very alienating, and people just don't want to engage with folks who don't have lived experience, who can provide nuanced support that really matches our challenges.
It's interesting that you say that, Helen, because when it kind of triggered something in me, you know, growing up, we were the only family members in Canada. And so my parents would always tell me, you know, as Black people, you have to be 10 times better, 10 times stronger. So when it comes to not feeling well or expressing your emotions, you have to keep everything under check. And so maybe it's a little bit of not wanting to admit that you need some support, or feeling that you're going to, you know, make other people ashamed if you're like, oh, I need some extra support, because you've always been taught like you got to be strong. You got to be a strong Black man or a strong Black woman, and being strong doesn't include having to go seek help all the time. And so it's just all these cultural, you know, clashes that go on in the background that can stop entrepreneurs or not just everyday Black community members from seeking that support.
You know, as immigrants, we know that our families invested a lot, sacrificed a lot to come to Canada. So there's an expectation that we become excellent. We make the most of our opportunities. And I mean, here we are. We've done. But finally, there's more of a recognition that this this so-called Black excellence, which I believe in.
Mhm.
It's gone more from an expectation. It's gone more from an aspiration to an expectation. And so more of us feel like we must be excellent at all costs. And that's probably creating a lot of intensity in terms of working twice as hard, being perfect, being excellent, and the toll this perfectionism is a lot, especially when even when you accomplish, people are very quick to undermine your abilities or your accomplishments and kind of write it off as if, oh, it's because you're a Black person. You know, you were given X, Y, and Z because of quotas or special programs, employment equity, right? So all of these things are not very helpful in terms of us not only accomplishing, but that we can take full credit for what we've accomplished.
Right, right. So I guess we do have a question here from someone, and thank you for this question. I'll read it in a second. But just to encourage everyone, if you do have any questions for our panelists here, our experts, please feel free to put that into the chat. Or alternatively, you can raise your hand. And also a reminder that we do have the links to our surveys for our entrepreneurs. Please take a moment to complete that. It'd be greatly appreciated. But on to our question from Kwabna Mensa, another namesake of mine. Being of African descent, should we utilize Western strategies in order to deal with mental health issues? Or should we more so incorporate our traditional methods? What is the perfect balance? That's a great question.
I
So
find
should
there are
we
a lot.
utilize Western strategies or incorporate our traditional methods?
I think we should do what works. If we have access to Western strategies that work for us, use them. If we have access to Afrocentric ones that work for us, use them. I think we should use whatever we have. We've earned it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. So at BEMI, we created toolkits, which are being released at the end of this month. And the very first toolkit that we're releasing is about advocating for yourself. And it's really special to me. And it was an idea that was fostered out of a conversation with Dr. Nene Kwafele, where we were discussing the experiences of Black community members within the healthcare system. And so oftentimes you find yourself not advocating for your needs and just trusting our healthcare professionals blindly. So from this dialogue, we crafted what I believe is like going to be a fantastic toolkit, and it's designed to empower individuals in making informed decisions about their healthcare. So it covers, aspects such as selecting your clinician, posing the relevant questions, and assessing your feelings after your initial meeting, and just understanding what type of support is going to be best for you. Is it going to be art therapy? Is it going to be, Helen, I'm sure you know all the different types of therapy that are available. There's so many different types. And so along with traditional therapy, you just really have to take some time and think about what your personal needs are as an entrepreneur, and yeah, test out clinicians, test out the type of therapy or support that you get until you find the right balance for you.
So on that topic, can you think of a situation where there might actually be a clash in terms of traditional methods versus Western strategies? Is there any situation where there might be a clash in that sense?
Well, officially, I'm not a therapist, but I would say that I have nothing against going to the pastor, but if you're seeking support from somebody who, yes, you trust them and they have an Afrocentric perspective, but if their support is not helping you progress on whatever it is you're struggling with, then I think you need to look for a different solution.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
I'm curious to know how much time you give it. Like, how much time do you give for real change? Because when we started BEMI, we selected 5 free sessions with a therapist, just because we were told that, you know what, that's 5 hours is good to kind of figure out what direction you want to go in, but how much time do you give it till you're like, this isn't working, maybe I need to switch it up?
Well, I think 5 is a good starting point, but my feeling is if I have 1 or 2 interactions with somebody and I feel worse somehow, that is enough of a signal for me to find a new path.
Right.
So maybe we can even
Or to feel bad, right? Like, I have stuff to do.
We have businesses to run.
well, maybe we can probably dive a little bit deeper into the selection process to kind of figure out which path you actually take, right? I know, Sarah, you were talking about that a little bit in terms of the toolkits that are going to be released. So definitely excited to see that once it's actually released. But maybe if you can dive a little bit deeper into kind of the steps you can take, even just on the selection, right? You brought up a really great point. In my mind, or I've heard some entrepreneurs or even non-entrepreneurs say, they might be hesitant to actually go to another Black service or clinician. Again, because of stigma, maybe because of, whatever reason they may have. But even just talking about the selection process on just trying to determine which type of therapy they should actually go to. That's actually the first time I actually thought of it or actually ever heard of that. So maybe if you can dive deeper into kind of the selection process a little bit and kind of give some tools and resources for those in attendance to now actually take away from.
Oh, wow. So I'm not, I won't have all the questions that we should be asking off the top of my head. But what I can do is everybody who's in the room today, when the toolkit is available, I'm happy to send the details over to Collins, who can share the toolkit with everybody, because it's a long process.
Or maybe even just the Cole's notes. Some of the questions, some of the things to look for. I'm sure, again, if it was very simple, I'm sure there wouldn't be an entire toolkit. It would kind of be a little one-page document. But some of the tools, some of the questions, some things to look out for example, just so we have something that we can take away with while we wait for the full comprehensive toolkit.
Okay, so some of the questions that we have in here to ask yourself prior to finding your ideal form of therapy are questions like, how do you usually cope with stress or difficult emotions? And of course, they're all multiple choice. Like, do you talk to your family? Do you do creative activities? Do you take time out to do physical exercise? Some of the other questions that we have are, what is it that you want to gain out of therapy? What description fits your communication style best? What are some of the things you're hoping to, again, achieve through therapy, or what type of structure do you like? And so depending on your answers to questions like that, it will kind of give you an idea of the type of therapy that might be best for you. And then once you find the therapy that might be best for you, what the toolkit will lead you on to do is how to find a therapist that offers that type of therapy. And then when you find your therapist, it will give you a few questions to ask your therapist, or a few questions to explore within yourself after that first session, just so that you can see if that is the right fit for you. And again, it's really about guiding people on how to schedule your consultations, going through the preliminary discussion with the therapist, just to discuss, share some of the reasons behind why you're seeking therapy, to help them understand your concerns and needs. And of course, clarifying expectations, so that you can clarify their expectations as well as your own, as to what you're trying to get out of it. So yes, it's like I said, it's really heavy, but Yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing it and sharing it with everybody in the room here today, as well as with, you know, the other toolkits that we have that include anxiety, setting boundaries, burnout, self-care as an entrepreneur.
Right. Okay. That sounds very exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to that and sharing that. So thank you for some of those insights. I guess, Dr. Helen, in terms of, I understand that you do some consultations in terms of corporate culture and entrepreneurs as well too, as it relates to mental health. Are there any red flags that we should look out for in a workplace as owners and even as employees that we should look out for that will affect our mental health? And then maybe even some tools or suggestions on how to deal with that or how to approach mental health in the workplace.
So I think for me, the big one is that when you're an employee and you work in an organization, if you feel like you have to always be on guard, always on the lookout for being mistreated, whether it's because of racial issues or non-racial harassment or bullying, that right there is a signal that you probably need to find another workplace. For the longest while, I used to think that, you know, so long as you're earning good money and you kind of like your work, maybe you can just make the best of it. But I've come to understand that even if you can tolerate any kind of mistreatment, it's terrible for your health. Of course, it's bad for your mental health because it could trigger things like the imposter syndrome, or in fact, I call it imposter treatment, because if you're constantly treated as if your ideas are not that good, you don't really fit in, you're kind of excluded, you're treated like an imposter. And I think that can fuel imposter syndrome. But really, what I've come to learn is that there's something called weathering. And weathering is basically this ongoing impact of oppression and stress that you deal with, whether it's from, you know, anti-LGBTQ mistreatment or religious minority treatment or disability status, whatever. For us as Black people, it's predominantly the anti-Black racism. But each of these small negative interactions, microaggressions, the exclusions, the being passed over for promotion, all of these things, they add up to little tiny traumas. And finally, there's a recognition that even if you've never had a big classic trauma, like you've never been in combat, you've never had a serious car accident or what have you, if you string enough of these mini traumas together, has the exact same impact as if something terrible has happened to you. And what's worse than that is it has impact on your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system, your immune system. And so this is part of why during the pandemic, so many Black and brown people were faring worse. Their systems had been worn down from all this oppression over the years, and somehow just trying to deal with it and still remain reasonably composed and able to be productive. All of that stuff, it shows up. So I'm not saying everyone should quit their job tomorrow if they're not being treated well, but certainly if you have to be forever in self-protection mode at work, that's your red flag. You need to do something so that at some point you can find another job or set up your side business or your full business, and over time transition to something where you can do your work and all of your intellectual capacity, your creativity, your energy, it's all going into your work instead of losing 30-40% of it to just.
I was going to say, if whoever wants to quit their job, Dr. Helen will replace your salary. Since you But then you gave us the disclaimer, don't quit your job. So I was gonna say, I was like, oh, this is great. Dr. Helen's giving everyone a job. It's fantastic. No, no, definitely appreciate those insights. So now that's as an employee. Now, as an entrepreneur, let's say as an owner, are there any tools or assessments that we can personally do to evaluate kind of the workplace that we're fostering for our employees? Are there any quick, indications that we can use to now see if we are creating a workplace that might not be the best, provide the best experience or well-being for our employees? Is there anything like that that we could
Yeah, well,
assess?
there are lots of signals that your workplace isn't great for other people as you think it is. So if people don't stay, that's your big one. If they're often calling in sick, then typically they're not just calling in sick. Maybe they're calling in sad. Maybe they're taking days off to kind of recover from whatever's at the workplace. So those are the ones. But I always recommend doing some kind of an anonymous survey to get a sense of how are people experiencing the workplace. If it's attribution, well, nobody's going to necessarily say you're a jerk if you're being a jerk. So you can do it anonymously. That's what I recommend, because that way people are more likely to be honest and not fearful of retribution. And again, if they're scared of retribution, probably means you've got a problem in your culture.
Absolutely. I've also seen, also exit interviews as well too, might also help. Also identify any challenges while they're on their way out, right? So that would help.
You want to keep them in the first place.
Exactly. For sure. So now I guess as individual entrepreneurs, is there anything that you've used personally? Actually, Obed, I see that you unmuted. Did you have a question, Obed? No? Okay. Sorry, just a reminder to everyone that if you do have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or put it into the chat box, and then we can fill those questions. And then again, we also have the surveys to complete as well too while you're listening in. In terms of individually, personally, for both of your stories as entrepreneurs as well, I guess maybe if you could talk to kind of the challenges you had in terms of actually setting up your individual businesses, as well as what advice did you give yourself to kind of get to this point, or deciding to now service a community as well? Maybe start with you, Sarah.
So so many challenges with Style ID. We had 15,000 users. We had partnerships with 20 costume designers, partnerships with networks, and we still weren't able to raise any funding. In fact, I was told on multiple occasions that I should hire a white male to lead the team so that I can move ahead faster. And so I kind of decided to take a break because I didn't know what to do. And it's like I kept running and hitting a wall, go to the Valley, go to Europe, win all the contests that you can win around your app, but the goalpost is always shifting. And so I ended up taking a break to launch Innovate Inclusion because I wanted to hear and connect with my community of Black entrepreneurs to see what everybody else is doing to find that support. And I just realized at the time there wasn't much support. And so this was in 2018 that I took a break and started Innovate Inclusion in 2018. And then 2019, my good friend Kofi said, Sarah, you got to get back into Style ID. I'm sending you to Ghana. I want you to meet with my sister, who is Jackie Apea. And he's like, she's a fantastic movie star in Accra. You go meet with her and you have to relaunch Style ID in Africa. And so I ended up coming down here and COVID hit. Everything was shut down. And so Style ID it has been on a permanent hiatus, but it's something that I'm really excited about now that there's been so much support around there's been so much more support around Black entrepreneurs, especially in the Canadian ecosystem. And I feel like I can see a road forward, especially in Africa. So yeah, I mean, I had to take a break. I had to take a break and figure out a new pathway forward because I don't think that it was healthy for me to keep going and hitting those walls. It wasn't healthy for me at all. So yes.
So taking a break, that's
Mhm.
great advice. And I guess sometimes it's very well needed, right? So
Yeah.
it's more so a rest and continue rather than keep sprinting and burn out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Time for self-reflection, right? Just because, yeah, I just feel like the social or just the isolation that I was feeling at that time, it just wasn't healthy. And kind of like Dr. Helen was saying, when things just don't feel right, you gotta get out for a little bit. So well, a lot of times you hear in the world of entrepreneurship that you need to fail fast. And I've in there for so long, just fighting and fighting and fighting. I don't think I was failing fast enough. And so, yeah, so took a break, kind of um, reimagining what could be. And so I feel like I'm almost ready to restart that journey now.
And I wouldn't even say you've taken a rest. You
I know.
did, right? You're the same person. You just apply the same skills and abilities to another project.
Yeah,
And
very true. Yeah.
thank goodness you were there because a lot of people survived the pandemic because of your interventions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to think. And I don't think that Black entrepreneurs give themselves enough credit for the work they've done or for the distance that they've traveled, because it is true. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll review the surveys and people will just be like, thank you so much for this program. And maybe everything that I was doing was supposed to lead up to this moment. And maybe it's not Style ID, maybe it's something else, but I'm really happy that we were able to support the entrepreneurs that we supported through the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And any challenges on your side, Dr. Helen, in terms of you getting started in your personal entrepreneurship journey?
So I think for me, probably two initial big barriers. The first one that in retrospect, I probably didn't have as big a network as I should have or could have to really launch. So that was part of it, because a lot of the people I knew were in academia or they were in the government. And yes, I have clients from both of those sectors now, but I probably would have been better off if I'd had somehow built a bigger network before I started. So once I had gained better traction in terms of my outreach and visibility, certainly things got easier. And the other piece is probably, just dealing with a lot of discrimination. Because, 2012, when I started, it was not cool to be a Black woman in business. It wasn't. And even though I was very good at my work and, I was building a pretty good work, I could tell that sometimes people were very polite and very friendly, but they would send business to other people. So it just took time to win more hearts and minds. And thank goodness, now established. So those are not really the same issues that I'm struggling with. I mean, these days you go to my website, well, obviously there's a Black person involved. And if you don't like it, then you're going to keep looking. But thank goodness, a lot of people like what I make. So they call.
So they call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think that's very encouraging to actually see, fellow entrepreneurs, go through their challenges and come out on the other side. because oftentimes, like you mentioned, you might think that you're in isolation. You might think that, you might be the only person experiencing these challenges, but I guess as a community, it's good to know that there are resources available. There are other entrepreneurs that go through similar situations, and that we share these testimonies and resources amongst each other so that we can all kind of succeed and get through it to the other side, right?
And there were a lot more resources available now than there were in 2011, 2012, right? There was no, there was no Dream Legacy Foundation, I don't think. There was no Black Chamber.
Mhm.
There are lots of things that exist now that weren't in place then. So I think people's odds of success are definitely better now. And we don't always talk about it, but pre-George Floyd, there were a lot of Black people who did not do business with Black people. That's getting better. And that alone will help a lot of people become more successful.
Right.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
touched the third rail there, but
So I wanted to thank both of you, Dr. Helen and Sarah, for joining us today. I think this was a great discussion, very insightful. So we want to thank you for your time. Again, if anybody has any final questions for our panelists, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand now. Otherwise, we'll go through some housekeeping and some reminders for our attendees. And then we'll go over to some final thoughts from Dr. Helen and Sarah before we end off for today. So I'd like to take some time to share some information about projects that are being spearheaded by our Beck co-leads at the Sprout School of Business at Carleton University. And the first one being the Beck ecosystem mapping. We have been mandated by the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada to create a network map of, of Canadian Black entrepreneurship ecosystem. You can think of this ideal partnership ecosystem as all the people, resources, and organizations that exist in an environment that support, encourage, nurture, and sustain entrepreneurship. By collaborating with us, you'll be part of an ecosystem that will be accessible to the Black community at a national scale. And this map meets the express need of Black entrepreneurs for a platform to connect for possible new contracts, again, going through collaboration, joint ventures, peer support. The network map will show the linkages, connections, and relationships that exist between entrepreneurs. It will provide current and future entrepreneurs access to support, information, and resources, and ultimately help promote visibility between and among Black entrepreneurs. So please explore our database linking entrepreneurs with partners, mentors, and advisors. So you can definitely see that link, ecosystem map link in the chat box below. The other two programs that you can support are surveys, right? So we have both a quantitative and qualitative survey. And the national surveys basically help us to tell the story of Black entrepreneurs and their enterprises, advance and energize the Black entrepreneurs, and spotlight critical gaps where Black entrepreneurs face the greatest challenges and opportunities. This survey is a part of a survey study led by a Black research team, and again is mandated by Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada. It's available in French and English for our Francophone brothers and sisters. It's inclusive of many different peoples within the Black communities. It's tested by Black entrepreneurs and researchers, approved by Carleton University Ethics Board to safeguard your rights as a participant. It is completely anonymous and no emails are collected. So please definitely take part in that as well too. Once again, you'll see that link in the chat box now. So we encourage everyone to take action and participate in the survey so you can help us build a thriving future for Black entrepreneurs. So once again, if you have any questions for our panelists, I don't see any hands raised and nothing in the chat here. So I will leave it to Sarah first and then Dr. Helen, if you want to give any parting words for our entrepreneurs in terms of dealing with that intersection of entrepreneurship and your mental or your well-being in general.
Absolutely. When I first started in the world of entrepreneurship, my business was my life. And I've since come to create a different strategy around coping with my business. So what I've done is I've kind of split my life into these 9 different sections, which include alone time, spiritual growth, leisure, personal development, friendship, relationships, contribution, family, and work. So I created this kind of framework that sustains both my professional and my personal life. And so that it kind of creates a situation that if one area in your life is kind of is failing or not failing, but it's not doing so well, your whole life isn't going to fall apart because you have all these other 8 areas that are really enriched and really great. And so just making sure that you focus on different areas of your life and you realize it's business, it's a lot of fun, but if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. But if it does work out, that's amazing, fantastic. And I hope that everybody's businesses work out. But just really take time to nurture all of the areas of your life.
And are they equally weighted in that?
I guess it would depend on what you do, but what I essentially do is every year I kind of go in and I say what I want this area of my life to look like this year. So friends, I want to make sure I go out for dinner with a friend, once a month, or talk on the phone with the friend 2 times a week, just simple things so that you can make sure that, everything's there. So it just, I mean, try to make them equal. Some will have heavier weighting than other, like family, of course, will have heavier weighting for a lot of us, and your personal relationship with your partner may have a heavier weighting, but it's all important, and it's all important to figure out and include so you can have an enriching life.
Amazing, thank you. Over to you, Dr. Helen.
Mine's a lot simpler. I do a lot of time blocking. So when I wake up in the morning, I give myself some time to just ease into my day, a little meditation and breathing, try to doors and get some exercise, and then start my work stuff. And even when I start my work day, I focus on all of my work earlier in the day. So in articles or reports or preparing for presentations, all that deep work happens in the morning. And that way I'm not kind of starting and stopping. So starting some deep work and then switch to client facing stuff. So generally speaking, afternoons are when I see clients. And I find it's an easier way to balance, always learning, always developing, and supporting clients. And try to have a hard stop so that I'm not still at my computer in the evening, because I do like what I do. Time can get away from me. So little things like setting alarms so that I stop at a certain time and move into dinner time, downtime.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Having those restrictions and those checks and balances to make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves and when it comes to our businesses. So great advice there. So we'll end it off here. Once again, we want to thank you, Dr. Helen and Sarah, for joining us. We thank everyone for attending. A reminder that this is just the second series in the leadership series, all a part of the Black History Month Dream Series. We have 24 workshops spread across the month of February. So definitely register for those, some in business, some in research, some in leadership. And our next series is going to be on February 9th at 3 p.m. That's our next leadership series here. But definitely reach out. You can follow Dream Legacy Foundation on social media and can visit our website to learn more about our other programs as well too. All designed to help visible minorities and the Black community specifically in regards to building generational wealth, as well as taking care of their needs within the community. So thank you once again for your time, and we hope to see you on the next future sessions. And we hope you enjoyed today's discussion. So have a good one, everyone.
Thanks
Take
for having
care. Thanks.